Congratulations, aviator. You've successfully soloed and now can fly a Cessna 172. But your journey has only begun, and we can look beyond the confines of the traffic pattern and head out to explore the world. But first, a final challenge awaits. Let's get to know our trustworthy Cessna and how to get it started. Get it ready for flight and off the tarmac. Today's mission is ground operations.
Welcome back to Navigraph Academy and Phase 2 of your virtual PPL. In this phase, we will be taking the airplane out on adventures, exploring amazing places. We'll use the coming lessons to fly in the northern part of the Alps, heading both around the stunning Lake Bodensee, into the amazing Austrian mountains, and even to the famous airport of Innsbruck. We will also get a chance to explore the major city of Zurich in Switzerland. This lesson is divided into two parts, where we will first discuss how to find our way around the airport on the ground by using taxiway charts. This will allow us to go from the parking area, the apron, and all the way to the runway. In the second and longer part of the video, we'll cover the ground procedures of the Cessna. And you'll learn quite a bit about the Cessna 172's technical systems and the checklists. At the end of this video, you will be able to start up, perform ground checks, and taxi the Cessna both to takeoff and back to parking in a correct manner. We'll begin by exploring the ground chart for our departure aerodrome. We are still operating out of the beautiful St. Gallen Altenrhein Airport in northern Switzerland. In order to find the proper routes to and from our parking position, we need to refer to some sort of ground chart. If you have a Navigraph subscription, you can access Navigraph Charts, which is our comprehensive chart and flight planning solution. In this phase of the virtual PPL, we'll use Navigraph Charts to find our way around the Alps. Here we are in Navigraph Charts. I am using the web version here, which you can access in any browser, but an app is also available on tablets and on mobile devices. Let us first find our airport at St. Gallen. Go to Flights, hit New Flight, which is up here, and pick an origin airport. We'll search for St. Gallen. There it is. Let's click Add to Route. We can now see that the airport is marked on the map. Before we zoom in and look at the airport in detail, let's make sure we're using the visual navigation chart. This enables us to see the terrain types and the visual flying rule procedures on the map, which is what we're going to be using in this phase. Click on the Map Preset Selector button and find VFR in the list. There we go, the map looks a lot nicer this way. Let us now zoom in on St. Gallen. At this zoom level, we can see that the Alpine mountain range is stretching out just south of the airport. The yellow area over here is the city of Zurich. Just south of the Alps, we can see Milan in Italy. And over here in the east, we find Munich. Quite a cool place to be flying in, right? And we are about to do just that. But the map is still looking quite cluttered. We're seeing a lot of unnecessary points. So let us modify it a bit more before we dive in. Click on the Map Layers Selector button up here. You'll get a list of all the major categories of points, but we can deselect the navigation map layers and the airspace map layer for now. This removes the GPS points and the radio beacons. We don't need these to fly visually, and as you can see, the chart gets a lot clearer. Let's zoom in now. As we zoom in, we can now see the airport itself. And do you recognize the area? Well, you should. We've been flying here in our previous lesson. First, we can see the traffic pattern that we've been following. Also, here are the island juts that Jason instructed us to maintain just outside while flying the downwind. As we zoom in further, we can see the airport itself, with the hangars, the aprons, the taxiways, and the runways. In Navigraph Charts, all data is taken from real data sources, and this is the actual layout of the airport as it looks in real life, as well as it is in the simulator. Here we find the information we need to navigate on the ground. In this lesson, we will be starting on apron Bravo. It is located over here. Once started up and ready for taxi, we will proceed to runway 10 for takeoff. And to do that, we need to exit apron Bravo and take a right onto taxiway November. The taxiway name is indicated by the letter N here. As we continue to taxi, we'll soon take a left onto Alpha. We may opt to do a short backtrack to reach the full-length position for runway 10. In real life, air traffic control would provide a radio instruction with our taxi route, stating these exact taxiways in the clearance to taxi.
492 Delta Papa, exact ground runway 7 Alpha 7, taxi via Echo Alpha, cross runway 13 Alpha.
But when the tower is closed, or like in the simulator today, where there is no air traffic control service, we can simply pick the best route on our own and taxi at our discretion. Alright, it's time to get into the aircraft. Let's head over to Jason, who is already sitting down there at apron Bravo.
Hey folks, and welcome back to the Cessna 172. In our previous lessons, we've been fully focused on learning to fly this beauty. But now, let's dive into the systems and the checklists required to master the aircraft. We've parked here on apron Bravo. The aircraft is unpowered and fully shut down. This is often referred to as the cold and dark situation. Before we fire it up, let's quickly look over our cockpit layout. On the left side, we find most of the electrical controls. Up here with the red switches, we will control the battery and generator together. These two buttons are called the master switch. To the right of that, we find two white switches. These control power for the two avionics computers driving the left and right electronic instrumentation screens. Just underneath, we can control all the internal and external lighting. Going further down, we find the circuit breakers. Unless we have a problem, all of these tend to stay in and untouched. To the left of the circuit breakers, we find the starting key. Let's talk a little bit about what this does. With the key, we can control the starter motor, which helps us get the engine cranking. Inside the engine, we find the starter assembly. It is mounted just below the propeller hub, right here. As we rotate the key all the way to the right, the smaller cogwheel is pushed into contact with its larger cogwheel, which is attached to the engine crankshaft. This makes the propeller rotate and initiates the combustion cycle. The key is called the magneto switch, as it also controls the two large magnets housed inside these black cylinders, mounted to the back of the engine block. The key has a right, left, and a both position. This controls which magnetos are active. They produce a strong electrical current. This electricity is led to the spark plugs inside the cylinders. This ignites the fuel and air mixture, leading to the start of the combustion cycle. When the engine is running, we release the key back to both position and the starter motor disengages. The magnetos now continue to provide ignition current for as long as the engine rotates under its own power. Going back to the cockpit and looking further to the right, we find the throttle and mixture control levers. I'll explain the mixture control in more detail soon. To the right of that is the flap lever that we have already talked about extensively in Phase 1. To the right of the flap lever is the cabin air conditioning controls. This is one of the few things we can't properly simulate in a flight sim just yet, unless you're looking to build your own integrated air conditioning system at your home desktop. That would be pretty cool. Finally, we have the pedestal. This is the area underneath the throttles, reaching down to the floor. Here we can see the trim wheel, which controls the trim tab on the elevator. The little red knob down here is the shutoff valve for the fuel line to the engine. At the bottom, sitting on the floor, we have a fuel selector. Since the Cessna has one fuel tank in each wing, this knob allows us to draw fuel from either the left or the right, or from both tanks. There's also a bunch of control knobs around the screens. We do not really care much about those right now, as they mostly are going to be related to the navigation modes that we have. I'll cover the necessary ones as we proceed with our training. All right, that's enough of the overview. Let's get her started. At Navigraph Academy, we make use of our own checklist. Our checklist is based on the real-life Cessna 172 operating handbook. If you opt to use the in-game checklist, Be aware that there are differences between flight simulators, such as MSFS 2020 and MSFS 24, and the real-life Cessna 172 procedures that we use. We have also removed some items that are not relevant for the simulator. One example is the item asking the pilot to make sure the seatbelts are on and latched. The Academy checklist is available at the Academy website, and it's of course totally free. Let's begin with the cockpit setup checklist. Brakes should be checked first. You can either do this by pressing the manual brakes, for example, by feet, if you have a pair of rudder pedals, or by engaging the parking brake. You'll find the parking brake lever just underneath the yoke, right here. On the real Cessna, you'd have to depress the brake pedals first, then extend the parking brake lever. In the sim, you can simply just press the parking brake to engage the brakes. All right, brakes are set. Next, let's check that all the circuit breakers are in and none have popped out. All the electrical equipment should be off. Check that all switches are pointing downwards and that the cabin lighting knobs are all pointing at the 9 o'clock position. Then, check that the white avionics buttons are down and off. If these were accidentally left on, there could be an electrical spike at the battery connection, which could damage the equipment. The fuel selector should be set to both. This allows the engine to get fuel from both fuel tanks. There we go. The fuel shutoff valve should be pressed in, meaning that fuel is free to flow to the engines. Great, the cockpit is set up. Let's move to the before start checklist. Before engine start, throttle should be open 1/4 of an inch, which is about 1/5 of the travel distance of the throttle control knob. This opens the fuel line somewhat to allow fuel to enter the engine at the engine start. The mixture control goes to the idle cutout. This is the fully aft position. The mixture control knob controls the air to fuel mixture rate. Fully aft is cut off, meaning no fuel and full air. This allows the engine to get maximum air intake at the crank. We'll push this forward as soon as we feel the engine igniting. Here's the standby battery. This is an extra battery fitted to the Cessnas that use the Garmin G1000 avionics. That allows for redundancy in case of a primary battery failure. The standby battery is normally in the armed mode, meaning it will kick in if all other electrical supply is lost. First, we'll run a quick check. It's so simple. Just push the knob to test the position and hold it in place. We monitor the light for 10 seconds. If the light stays on, the current is healthy. We flip it to the arm position now. The standby battery now feeds electricity to the system. We could see the primary flight display called the PFD light up. We verify that the screen boots up normally. Then we check there's no crossed out marks on the instruments. If there were, we'd have a faulty sensor. To check the quality of the standby battery, we also check the voltage of the E-bus and the M-bus. I'll explain this part in a bit more detail. The E-bus is the essential electrical bus to which all the important electrical consumers are connected. For example, the left display. The M-bus is the main electrical bus, where the rest of the equipment is connected. As you can see, less important functions, such as overhead lights and the taxi light, are installed here. Having equipment split in two like this allows the system to shed not as important things if we get into low power situation. The standby battery only powers the essential bus, ensuring maximum battery time for that vital stuff. For now, we check that the E-bus voltage is 24 volts minimum. This indicates a good standby battery. We check that the M-bus voltage is not above 1.5 volts. This means that the standby battery is not feeding any current into the main bus, as is desired. We also check that the amps of the standby battery are negative, meaning it's being used and providing current to the E-bus. Next check is the warning system. The annunciators are shown on the PFD right here. Right now, we can see the standby battery annunciator. That's good. That means the warning system is working. We switch the beacon light to the on position. This warns people we're about to start the engine. The next item to check is that the propeller area is clear. In real life, sometimes a clear prop is called to make sure you alert bystanders that the prop is going to start spinning.
Clear prop.
This is simply a precautionary here, as the next item on the checklist could invoke the propeller to spin without us ever touching the starter key. We'll explain this. As we switch on the master switch, the main battery begins to feed electricity into the system, including the starter motor circuit. If we have a loose wire somewhere, the engine starter motor could engage even when the key is not in the start position. This time there was no accidental start. That's good for us. Let's keep going. Our engine is cold today since it was not run recently. We need to prime it. Priming means pushing some fuel into those cylinders to allow a good start sequence. We do this with the electrical fuel pump. It's controlled by this switch. Let's put it on. You can hear the pump start. We push the mixture fully in and wait for about 4 seconds. Then we'll pull the mixture goes back to idle cutoff. Finally, we switch off the fuel pump again. This procedure has now pushed some fuel into the engine. A side note here, it could be a good idea to bind the mixture control to a specific access, such as a slider on your throttle device or a separate control slider on your joystick setup. This makes it much easier to control the mixture properly. Okay, it's time to start. Grab the key and move it to the start position. The engine and propeller begin to crank. Once we feel the ignition catching, let go of the key and simultaneously push the mixture control full pitch. Great stuff, we're in business. Let's put the RPM about 1,000 RPM for now. It's important to check the oil pressure quickly. The engine is cooled and lubricated by engine oil. An engine-driven pump moves oil around the engine. If the pump is broken, we'd see no pressure at all. If we get no pressure within about 30 seconds, we should switch the engine to off to avoid the damage. Easy peasy today, we got the green light indication straight away. Once the engine starts spinning, a generator coupled to the engine starts to generate electricity. This alternating current generator, or alternator, takes over the electrical supply role from the batteries now. As long as the engine spins, we'll have all the power we need. We check that the alternator is working by making sure there is no negative current shown on the amp meter. A positive figure here indicates that the alternator is charging the batteries. The absence of a low volts annunciator shows that we have good electrical flow from the alternator. Finally, we switch on the avionics switches. This powers up all the remaining equipment, driving the 2 electronic flight instrumentation displays. Now the multi-function display, or MFD, also kicks alive. We make sure to kick the small soft key on the MFD to accept the welcome message, and the screen booted up. Nice, all set. We're ready for taxi. The engine is now on, we have instruments, and we're eager to get going. Let's prepare to taxi. Before we do anything else, we should rehearse the taxi route. Again, we are up here at the apron Bravo. As we taxi southbound, we'll see the long taxiway November. We'll take a right and taxi all the way to the end. Just before reaching apron west, we'll turn left. We'll then stop at the holding point before runway 10. Okay, we've briefed the taxi route. Let's get going. First, we make sure that the taxi light is on. This gives good lighting in darkness, but also alerts other people who are planning to start moving. We can also switch on the nav lights if we so desire. Before we commence movement, we check both left and right to make sure we're not going to hit anything. I'll release the parking brake and give the engine a bit more power. We start moving. As we begin the taxi, we check that the brakes work by giving them a small squeeze. Yeah, the plane's slowing down. That's good operations. Here's the taxiway. Right turn here. Such a beautiful day to go flying. Look at those beautiful clouds up there. I imagine the view over the Alps is spectacular today. Here's the museum buildings on the right, and we can see the apron west coming up ahead. Let's turn left here onto Alpha. Here's the holding point marking, and we can see the signs indicating 2. We'll stop just short of it. Turning the plane slightly to the side, parking sideways like this, means we'll not blow propeller slipstreams onto any planes lining up behind us. It is time to perform our pre-departure checks. We set the parking brake and pick up our checklist again. Pre-takeoff checks. Park brake set. Flight controls. Let's run all of them to the ends, looking at the in-game yoke and pedals as we do, verifying that we can manipulate the controls in full deflection with our peripherals. In non-simulator operations, this would also make sure that the control cables are all set up correctly and working without issues. We check the PFD for no red X's, and they're all looking good here. The altimeter now needs to be set up. We can either find the local pressure on the weather report or figure it out by ourselves. I'll show you how. If you're playing with live weather, you can find current pressure at St. Gallen. It's found right here inside the Navigraph Charts. Go to the airport and click weather. You'll see the pressure under the altimeter. The pressure is given in both hectopascals and inches of mercury. The pressure shows up here and is set with a barometer knob here. But if you're not playing on live weather, there's another way to set up your altimeter with an unknown pressure situation. First, we find the elevation of the airport. The elevation for all airports are available in Navigraph Charts, right under General, right here. Now we simply turn the baro knob until the altimeter shows the airport elevation. The current sea level pressure can then be read on the altimeter's barometer reading. Also, we set up the standby altimeter with the same pressure value. You do that by turning this knob down here and reading the pressure on the small scale inside the instrument. We check that all other standby instruments are looking okay. The airspeed indicator should be at 0, and the artificial horizon should show a centered position. We now check that the fuel capacity looks about right. We'll explore fuel calculations at a later time. For now, this is more than enough for our short flight today. We make sure the mixture is set at rich in preparation for the engine run-up. We check that the fuel selector is in both. We set the trim for takeoff. This is done by rotating the trim wheel until the white marking aligns with the reference marking as shown here. It's time for the run-up. This will test the engine at close to cruise power. Run the throttle up to 1800 RPM. We'll make sure the brakes are holding the airplane in place by looking outside. We'll go down to the magneto switch. In the current position, the ignition of the engine is being provided by 2 separate magnetos, providing 2 separate sparks inside every cylinder. We'll test that both are working independently. Turn the key 1 notch to the left. We're now running on a single magneto. We should see a drop in RPM since a single magneto is providing less stable ignition compared to dual operation. And we do, as you can see here, we're below 1800 RPM. At the same time, since the engine keeps running, we know that the 1 magneto is operational. Turn the key back to both and make sure the RPM picks up again. Let's do the same thing, but for the other magneto. Turn the key 2 notches to the left. We're now running on the other magneto. Looks good, let's go back to both. Magnetos checked, and they're looking good. Okay, let's check our engine instruments. All in the green, and we have good voltage, no warnings. We verify the same thing on the annunciator panel. No warnings here either. We now perform an idle check. This means running the power all the way back to idle. The propeller should keep spinning, no problemo. We'd go back to 1000 RPM now. That concludes the engine run-up. Nice work. We now check that the flaps are set for takeoff. We'll use flaps up for our takeoff today. It's a good idea to make sure the flaps are up by also visually checking their position on the wings. Okay, it's time to go. Before we start taxiing out on the runway, let's make sure we know what we're going to do. Today, I plan on one pattern around the airport and then a full stop landing. Having a look at the Navigraph charts, we can remind ourselves of the traffic pattern layout. Taking off, we'll climb to 1,000 feet above the ground, which is about 2,300 here. We'll again join the left-hand pattern just like we've practiced. It'll be a quick lap before we turn back. We're ready. We switch our strobe lights on. This tells other planes we're preparing to enter the runway. We can now release the parking brake and line up. We checked out the runway and approach sectors, looking good, making sure we can see no other traffic. Once on the runway, we're back in a familiar position. This is where we've been starting our previous lessons. Nice work. Let me quickly fly this pattern, and then we'll talk about the after landing procedures as well. All right, I'm pretty happy with that landing. What do you think? I guess I'll see what the analytics say about it afterwards. For now, we'll slow down to a good taxi speed. I'll quickly check our charts for our exit. Here at St. Gallen, it's probably best to roll all the way to the end and exit on the taxiway called November. Okay, there it is. Let's turn left. Once we clear the runway, we can retract our flaps and shut off the strobe lights. Make sure you keep control of your airplane while you do this. Okay, looking at the taxi plate again, we can see that apron Bravo is located just beyond the 4 long hangars here. I can see them there on the right. Let's go to apron B. Here's our parking spot. Nice. Good job. One stop, we'll pick up the checklist. We checked that we did everything by heart correctly. Flaps were up, strobe lights were off. It's time to secure the airplane checklist. Parking brake, set. Throttle, idle. Electrical equipment, let's switch off all of these switches. Avionics, off. Both white buttons go to the off position. Mixture, idle cutout. This starves the engine of fuel and we have a clean shutoff. We let the prop stop. Magnetos all the way to the left, which switches off both ignition coils. Master switch, off. That means both red switches, which includes the main battery and the alternator. Finally, we set the standby battery to off. This depowers the plane fully. As a precaution, the fuel selector is then set to left or right. This prevents fuel flow from flowing between the tanks during parking. That concludes a whole flight covering all the procedures. You know exactly how to start up and shut down the Cessna. We're ready for our cross-country flight.
As you can see, flying the Cessna involves a lot more than maneuvering and aerodynamics. The ground operations knowledge that we've covered in this lesson will allow us to find our way around new airports, as well as to operate the Cessna safely from point A to point B. On your training lesson, you will start at apron Bravo at St. Gallen, fully cold and dark, and you'll be asked to perform the ground checks, and that includes all of them. Then you'll fly a lap in the pattern before returning to your parking area again, just like Jason did. Before you head over to St. Gallen, make sure you can access your ground chart and acquaint yourself with the functionality of it. I personally prefer to have Navigraph Charts on my tablet while I fly on my desktop computer. That way I can operate, pan around, and check my taxiways without having to switch between the simulator and the web browser. But you can also use charts in your browser window, on your phone, or even in-game via the in-game panel. Enjoy your training. And remember, don't forget to like, subscribe, and to leave a comment. It really helps us to further improve and spread our flight training content right here on YouTube. See you up there.